We're checking out Avowed on the Steam Deck. Now, before we get started, I do want to mention that this is the pre-release version of the game. The game is not fully out just yet, so just keep that in mind. And hopefully there are updates that do improve performance and overall quality of the game as time goes on. But as of right now, these are the settings that I'm using on my Steam Deck. So I have it set to 720, windowed. If I have it on windowed full screen, it gets a little janky with my capture card. So window is what I have it set at right now. You can do either or, it doesn't matter. The frame rate is going to be limited to 30. It can go higher, but 30 FPS locked is going to give you overall better experience and just smoother quality and just a more maintained performance. Motion blur I have turned off. Field of view you can play with as you wish. VSync on, ray tracing off. It is on by default. Upscaling I have to Fidelity FX. Super resolution quality to quality. FPS sharpness set to 30. And then everything else is going to be set to low. Now you can set the texture quality to medium if you want. You can set everything to medium, but I didn't really see too much of a difference between the actual textures of the game. So I set everything to low just to get a better, stable experience. Truthfully, I really hoped this game would run a little bit better. Hopefully, as time goes on, the developers will push out more updates to improve the overall experience. But as you can see in the top left-hand corner, my FPS is running between the mid-20s to that locked to 30 FPS. As you fight these creatures, it does maintain that 30. It doesn't really jump around all too much, so your experience is somewhat smooth as you're playing throughout this game. You can just go ahead and walk around, and you're going to maintain that 30 FPS. Now, there are certain instances, however, where I did see the FPS dip below the 20 mark, and it happens to be within the first city that I arrived at. It felt like it was loading in different chunks of the map, and every time it loaded in that certain chunk, the FPS would dip hard, and the lowest that I seen was 7 FPS. On average, it was in the mid-teens, and it only lasted about 2 or 3 seconds, and it then went right back up. But within those areas, I'm not really in combat scenarios, and I'm just talking to NPC characters. But once I left the city and I went into this open area, that didn't happen anymore. So only within the city does it really struggle. But in other situations, the FPS can actually go as high as 45 to 50 FPS while using these settings. And I've noticed that when you're in the dungeon areas, you're in more of a close quarter area, especially within the earlier game with the tutorial, you're in a smaller area. It's more closed off. You're going to see those higher FPSs if you don't happen to have it capped at 30. Now, within this entire recording, I do have it capped at 30, so you're not really going to see it jump up higher than that. But overall, I found that having it capped at 30 is going to give you just a smoother experience so that it's not jumping up and down within FPS all too much. So obviously the quality is going to matter the most when you're fighting different creatures. So within this area here, I'm fighting the black bear. You're going to notice that the FPS does stay and maintain that 30 FPS. This is one of those more closed off areas that I was talking about that you would experience in the earlier tutorial sections. This is kind of how it is. It's not really open area. There's less to render, so the game is going to maintain a more smooth and consistent FPS as you play. Fighting these bears, I didn't really see any stutters. There was no frame drops. It's just overall a smooth experience. The only issue that I have is just the quality and look of the game. That fire blast, pretty good as it hit the bear, but coming out of my hand, it looked a little jagged. The shadows look like Minecraft blocks. That's one big thing that I noticed that really bothers me. But bumping up the shadow quality does take a big hit and does require a little bit more out of the Steam Deck, so you're going to see your FPS tank if you happen to do that. So just setting the shadows at low is the best you're going to get. You can try setting it to medium, but it doesn't really make all too much of a difference, especially for shadows in the distance. Now, shadows up close might look good, but as the further the shadows are, the more of a blocky texture that it has. Another thing would happen to be the fur or hair on people. It just doesn't render it all too well, and that does look real pixelated, real messy, jaggedy, artifacty type of look to it, and that can take away from the gameplay. The guy that is following me right now, Kai, does not have any hair, so he looks perfectly fine. But in the earlier game, I did get paired up with a lady as well as this blue-haired creature that it did not look good when talking to them. That's my only gripe. That's the one thing that I noticed that this does not look good with, is the hair and the shadows just look bad. Overall, the game runs consistently at that 30 FPS if it's locked at it, and it's smooth. It's playable. it's not the best experience. Do I recommend you play this solely on just a Steam Deck? Definitely not. Unless there's improvements that do come out within the coming weeks or months that improve performance on the Steam Deck. If this is the only way for you to play the Avowed, definitely skip it. Wait for it to get improvements. Or if you happen to have an Xbox or a more beefier PC, definitely play it there. The Steam Deck, you can try and play it. You may not like it. Overall, it's going to look slightly better on the handheld itself because obviously the screen is smaller than what you may be watching this on. If you're watching it on the phone, it may look okay. If you're watching this on a tablet or a bigger screen than what is available on the Steam Deck, obviously it's going to look a little bit worse. And then you also have YouTube's compression that's just going to make it look slightly worse as well. So just keep that in mind. The game does look a little bit better on the handheld, just not that much better. So once again, overall, do I recommend this on the Steam Deck? Currently, no. If you happen to have something else to play it on, play it there, wait for updates, wait for improvements and stability fixes for this game, and hopefully it does arrive soon. This is the pre-release of the game, so it's not completely out just yet. So that's another thing to keep in mind. If you happen to have any questions or any concerns, let me know in the comment section down below. The best way to support me is to like the video, subscribe to the channel. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope to see you in the next one.